Hey,
Testing,
Testing, testing.
testing, testing.
testing.
Are you actually are you actually out of your it doesn't sound like you're coming from your mic though. It sounds like you might be from your camera.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Mhm. Uh,
and now I'm not hearing anything. It sounded kind of, yeah, it's very, very faint. Much
there you
better.
go.
There we are. Is this better? Can people
Yeah.
hear me now? This is how complicated podcasts can get, unless you're not recording live, and this is how complicated podcasts can get. Probably not that complicated. I don't know where I was going with that, but I'm going to stick with it because I've. All right, so I think we've got everything set up. So if you guys are good, let's go ahead and get things started
I'm all set.
and get into this. 3, 2, 1. And then Shay just sits there and goes, I wish I could be part of that. But no, you can't. Because YouTube track. All right. Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in geek for Sunday afternoon, July 11th, 2021. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drek. I am joining you all live from whatever sick houses you want to be able to join from. I am joining personally from the Houses of Healing in Lord of the Rings, just because I would like to imagine nice faint blue light coming down upon me and making me look gorgeous. And then Galadriel comes down and goes, why the hell are you in here? And joining me today is my usual cavalcade of fellow geeks, fellow YouTubers, fellow online personalities, and enjoyable personalities, by the way. If you guys are not subscribed to their channels, what the heck is wrong with you? You should probably do something about that. And we'll start things off with Alex the Shadow Blazer, who apparently is going to be trolling us all with his 16-bit sunglasses as well as his pink hair. Alex, how are you?
Purple actually. So there you go.
It looks pink
I'm
on my
good.
screen.
Oh, it's purple. So there you go.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's kind of a bit, I guess it has a bit of a pink hue, but it is mostly purple.
It's probably like a lavender, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't get that much in terms of Avatar. Like, everybody who's watching kind of gets the same thing. So all we know is that you have D-pads in your hair, and we all just want to start pressing them so that we can get our down-to-forward punch and get the Hadoukens out.
That's right.
That would be helpful. And then also joining us is Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, of From the Shelf, Rhapsody in Cinema, Martial March, Monster Clash. Romney, how the heck are you doing?
Oh, forgot that I was still muted for a second there.
Okay,
Well,
good.
hey.
At least I'm not the only one that does that.
Yeah, well, so far, doing all right. Just got off of another weekend shift at a TV news station, which usually carries the usual trappings, especially given the weekend we've had here in Utah. But beyond
Yes.
that, can't really complain.
Yeah, because I'm not. Maybe I'm not thinking of the exact same thing as you are with the weekend, but mine has just been dealing with sick kids and whatnot. So that was always fun. And then we're getting ready for Pioneer Day would be a week away. Kind of thing. So,
Yeah. So the weekend after next weekend would be the Pioneer Day weekend, which for the listeners at home who aren't familiar, Pioneer Day is a state holiday here in Utah.
yes.
And pretty much going off the name, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds
Well,
like.
and not only that, but like the entire month of July and to some extent August are always filled here because all the separate towns like to celebrate their founding, and all of the foundings are around that time as well. So at that point, you have basically at any given moment in the Salt Lake Valley, you have a state fair going on. And I believe the concept is that they just borrow each other's state fairs and then they just go nuts. And then also joining us tonight is returning special guest, Shay Tari. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I can't really complain. Doing
See,
good.
a few people were wondering if we don't know if Shay's going to come back because all three of the other podcast hosts railed on Mortal Kombat so hard. And apparently,
No, of course not.
yeah, I guess the impression was shared by me as well because I knew that you liked what you had seen, but you knew that there were flaws to it. But everyone's like, Shay's not going to show up again because they made fun of Mortal Kombat too hard. No.
No, of course not. I know
No.
that everyone has differences in opinion, and I never take people's opinions to heart because everyone's going to have differences in movies, TV shows,
Exactly.
music.
Well,
And as long as
the
you
example-
enjoy it or whoever you are enjoys the content, it doesn't matter what.
Yeah, the example
shouldn't
I was
matter
going to
what
bring
people
up is like you obviously do anime content, and like that is the most diverse pool of critics you could ever have, in my opinion. Like movie critics, we can all have kind of a staple concept, but anime fans are so across the board in preferences and everything like that you kind of have to gain a thick skin if people don't necessarily like insert favorite anime here kind of thing. So I know that Alex has had to do that on a number of occasions. I think you've had to do it a couple of times on your channel too. And I've had to defend myself plenty on the anime front. I don't really have to defend myself on the movie front. I don't know why. But that's appropriate considering that our first story today, Alex is going to be so proud of me because we're starting talking with anime.
I know, it's a miracle.
It is a miracle. We're talking about the animus, and then later we're going to talk about the video games.
That's right.
So I don't know all of the intricacies of this story because a lot of other stories that I've read on it have gotten a lot of information wrong. So if I get this wrong, Alex, feel free to step in and correct me.
Okay.
So Amazon apparently pulled the biggest switcheroo of the century. At least that's how some people on the internet are reacting to it, as they have acquired the rights to the new Evangelion movies. This is actually one of the things I saw in a couple of articles where they said they had gained the rights to all Eva. So at that point, Netflix loses rights to the show and to the other movies. No, from what I understand, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, this is just the rebuild movies, right?
Yeah, it's just the rebuild movies.
And they actually also got the rights to be able to have the unveil of 3.0 plus 1.0. It's not 4.0, right?
Correct. It's
So-
officially 3.0. Well, okay, it's 3.01 plus 1.01, so... But either way, it's the final in the rebuild series.
Anna, you're never allowed to use patch notes terms ever again. I'm just saying for the record. Like, they're already hard enough to follow with when game devs use them. Don't use them if you're not a game dev. So yeah, they get the streaming rights to it, and they've already announced a release date, if I remember correctly. It is like mid to late August, correct?
Let's see. I'm double checking on that one. I think you might be right.
But bottom line is,
Yeah, just
the wait
August
is over.
13th. August 13th.
August 13th. So the wait is over. And you will be on vacation, so you can't watch it until the following week.
I know. Great timing, right?
You didn't realize that till now? Okay.
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just barely thought about that. So, yeah, a lot of anime fans, and I'm going to start with Alex and then go to Shay on this, because a lot of anime fans are basically saying this is like the coup of the century, that somehow they were able to, I believe Funimation had the rights to the movies before that. And
Yeah.
so at that point, they basically stole them away, and now it's like, oh my gosh! Would you care to elaborate on is this the heist of the century, like everybody is saying it is?
I mean, I kind of saw it coming when Netflix got the rights to the series, and considering all the problems that happened with the last movie, 3.0, with Funimation having to go back and do constant retakes, and the long wait before it came out to DVD release here in the US, that I kind of just figured that the powers that be in Japan, Kara and whoever else, were going to start looking to other sources for the final movie.
Okay, so you don't think this was Funimation just saying we're not going to deal with this anymore? You think that it was basically Kara that said, no, we're going to go somewhere else?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. I didn't know all of the stuff about the... I knew that there was problems when recording 3.0, but I didn't know the details of them, and what you've basically described kind of makes sense. Especially if I remember correctly, from 1.0 and 2.0, there tends to be a number of takes that need to be done, because the way I understand it is they would send new dub scripts, I want to say like once a week, basically making sure that they got everything right according to Ano's specifications and the dub director's specifications. Does that sound right?
I don't know if that is the case, but it wouldn't surprise me if it is. There certainly can be dubs that are just that demanding, like where the Japanese can get very hands-on.
Yeah,
So
I've heard
it's very
similar,
possible.
I've heard similar horror stories with the Shin Godzilla dub too. Just for some reason, like Ano basically pulls a Peter Jackson when it comes to his stuff. Like, he wants to make sure that it's as perfect as it can possibly be.
Mhm.
To be fair, considering what happened when Roland Emmerich touched Godzilla, it's kind of one of those, I can't really blame him. And given some of the controversies with localization we've been seeing as of late,
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me that more and more anime companies are starting to become a lot more wary of just letting a distributor in North America do what they usually do.
And speaking of that, Romney and Shay, you can get in on this too. I have heard tell that Japanese rights holders have actually lost a lot of faith in Funimation, not necessarily because of any controversies that are going around it, but a lot of them were very irritated when the video leaked of them doing their bloopers. And as you've pointed out on the podcast, Romney, they don't like it when you do that. They want people to think it's flawless, and that's actually hurt their repertoire, or it's hurt their reputation in Japan. So they don't know if they can trust them.
Yeah, it's not so much that they hate the bloopers, it's just more they want to make sure when it comes to particular brands in Japan, they want to make sure that in the case of Dragon Ball, it's a case of, hey, let's make sure we're making sure that what is coming out in relation to Dragon Ball is age appropriate and is appropriate to the brand. And well, all the sex stuff they were doing, not necessarily appropriate to the brand, at least in the eyes of Toei and Shueisha.
Especially since a lot of their voice actors are far more tame. Like, here's the thing: when the Japanese voice actors come here and then they start joking around, they're just as I want to say, like, even with the language barrier, they're about as let loose as any other voice actor you'd ever meet. But they just know that when it comes to the Japanese companies, they have to maintain a corporate appearance, kind of thing. It's kind of like how Disney actors used to be. I want to say up until about the 70s or 80s.
Well, and in a sense, Disney actors are still somewhat like that, even with the Marvel films, because there are still a lot of strict guidelines that people who sign on for Marvel or Star Wars still have to follow.
Yeah.
And that's actually probably one of the reasons, because this is something that tends to do better here in the States, where there are these things like voice actor improv shows, where we have a lot of podcasts and shows here in the US where voice actors basically improvise and do what they want. They've tried to replicate that same format in Japan, but from what I've heard, even to Japanese audiences, it's been a bit of a hard sell for precisely those reasons, especially if it's involving established characters and it's voice actors who are playing these established characters. Because of that tight control, the improv doesn't come as easily. Now, I could be wrong. Again, cultural differences, language differences, there's a whole lot of other factors. But again, it kind of comes from that same sort of place.
Yeah. Shay, what's your take on the Evangelion movies, the rebuild movies moving over to Amazon? I mean, am I wrong? Is this the heist of the century and I'm just not seeing it?
I don't think it's a heist of the century. I mean, we've heard of properties always changing over or changing hands and being redistributed on different services all the time, whether it's due to, drama behind the scenes that a lot of us don't know or don't have any insight into what actually may have happened if it was drama, or if it was just due to a licensing running out and another network picking it up, or another network getting it, or streaming service getting it. So I don't think it's the heist of a century. I just think it's probably just a lot of people might be upset about it if they don't have like Amazon Prime, or if they, or if they don't have Funimation, or if they have Funimation but don't have Amazon, Prime Video to be able to watch it, or feel like, oh, I have to pay for another streaming service now for me to be able to watch, or just to be able to watch Evangelion movies, because all of us have had to deal with that, where something gets put on its service and we're just like, oh man, now I have to figure out if I want to pay for this service or get the free trial and then automatically cancel it so that I don't get charged.
Well, and this
So,
actually I think might
that's what it
be
is.
Go ahead, Alex, sorry.
Oh, I was just agreeing with Shay. But
Okay.
actually, another fun thing to note, even back in the original Evangelion, the original series was by ADV Films, but the two movies that came after were by like another company entirely. So
Yeah,
even then, there's a little bit of precedent.
I can't remember what the company's name was. off the
I
top of
can't
my head.
remember either. I want to say it was Showtime, but no, it was probably somebody else.
And I'm also, in a way, like kind of not surprised with some of the companies moving from some of the American like anime companies to other services like Netflix or Hulu or Prime Video, only because I feel like maybe this is just my personal opinion, is I feel like they feel if it's just on Funimation or any other like American, licensing company for anime, that it's just going to be for that particular people that they're only going to reach are people who are just into anime. Whereas if you put it on a streaming service like Netflix or Hulu or Prime Video, they probably run more of a interest in people who may not be necessarily into anime but come across it and start watching it, and then from there. So I feel like that's just a way of them reaching a wider group of people, the same way how like most anime before streaming services would put on TV networks, and it was just as a way of reaching a wider net of people besides just those people who were into anime. So I feel like that could be also why. I mean, you see now that Netflix is trying to widen not just their anime content, but just a lot of their Asian content overall with like K-dramas and stuff like that. I was actually going to ask
you about this at some point. How did you feel about all of the Netflix anime that got announced? I want to say it was like 2 weeks before E3 happened, where we got like tons of anime trailers, including things like Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway. We got the announcement that Zack Snyder was working on a Norse Gods animation. Like those are the ones that are along with Masters of the Universe Revelation. Like Netflix is really pushing that anime button right now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with it. I think it's just a way that, number one, it's probably a cash cow, because it's a number, like I remember years ago when Netflix first started putting anime on there, and they didn't have a lot, but they had it just a little bit at the time. And then later on they came out and said like, oh, we're going to start putting more. And their reasoning was because they realized that anime was such an untapped market, because they knew that at the time, most anime fans either had to stream stuff illegally, download illegally, or they had to go through like Funimation or Crunchyroll or such, or like pay for other services that only cater to that content. So they were like, well, if we want to make more money, let's go into this untapped market of anime or animation, however, so we can basically make more money and get a lot of people onto our streaming service that are anime fans, but will also find other content that they enjoy. So me
Well, not only
personally,
that,
I'm
I
okay with that.
I think there's an additional detail that has to be considered with that is because now, in the last 1 to 2 years, I want to say, I want to say 2020 actually helped kind of strengthen this,
Mhm.
where we're having a lot more direct interaction between the Japanese studios and American companies. Whereas, like, in the 90s, if I've got this wrong, then feel free to call me on it, Alex. But there was much more of a liaison kind of relationship that was that was happening, because you would have like studios like Funimation basically not only be the dubbing studios but also the distribution arm, for lack of a better term. They were the ones who were kind of working out those DVD deals and the Blu-ray deals and everything like that. And in my opinion, I can't confirm this, but I've always kind of felt like those companies, like Funimation, like Central Park Media, always tried to pull the wool over the Japanese company's eyes a little bit, and always tried to say, like, you can't do this without us. And now
Yeah.
Japanese companies are realizing, especially through 2020, that a much more direct relationship actually works wonders for them. And so you can
Yeah.
actually
You're
get
right.
like way better deals. Whereas
Yeah.
because of the middleman that Funimation might be, they might, try to cut a little bit for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, if
Yeah.
you look at what Toei and Suburaya Productions have been
Yeah.
doing with their tokusatsu products,
I think
and
personally
basically
that's why Suburaya has not trusted any of them, because he got sick and tired of the liaison relationship that would happen.
well, with Suburaya, it's a bit different because Suburaya Productions, from the outset, wanted to make sure, basically, they didn't want a Power Rangers treatment for Ultraman. They wanted to make sure,
Yeah.
like, hey, you're releasing our shows as is. And that's why there was even the short-lived Ultraman, The Ultimate Hero US-produced series that, although it was of questionable quality, it was still very much on brand for Suburaya. But it was kind of that classic case where Suburaya and Toei are realizing, hey, if we set up YouTube channels and just put English subtitles on our episodes,
Yeah.
we can basically cut out these middlemen. And I mean, we don't even have to go very far in terms of how sneaky some of the distributors have been. I mean, look no further than Harmony Gold and the fact that even to this day, they are still holding Macross hostage. And
Yeah.
it's very frustrating. So it's
I
not even like we
Not
have to
anymore.
speculate. Well, depending on who you ask, I mean, we still have yet to receive a lot of the sequels to Macross here stateside, and they still have the rights because they somehow were able to renegotiate.
But I have been
with-
hearing that the Japanese studio that holds the rights to Macross has been getting what's the word I'm looking for? They've been getting
Patient.
called upon, and they've been getting their wheels greased a little bit to try
Yeah.
to maybe discontinue that relationship.
Yeah, problem is the rights to Macross is such a nightmare, not so much because of the fact of, oh, the original series was animated by Tatsunoko, but then funded by Studio Nue and this, I can't remember the third studio, but then you also have the fact that Harmony Gold literally copyrighted every relevant Macross term here in the States,
Yes.
meaning that even if they lose the rights, they still have the copyright, unless by court order, they're basically ordered to relinquish it, which the amount of money it would take for that sort of thing to happen, it would basically have to be Studio Nue themselves taking that step.
Yeah.
But again, we don't even have to speculate saying, oh yeah, like distributors are sneaky. There's established precedent that they've been sneaky in the past.
The
Yeah.
other thing I kind of want to point out with Amazon, and then I promise we'll get to you, Alex. The other thing that I also think has to be considered here is, yeah, Netflix has been making a big push because they have tons of anime that they want to cater to that anime audience. And it's very obvious there. I also think Amazon is trying to do that as well. And unfortunately, like, a lot of anime fans still consider Amazon to be vile, simply because they don't know that they've changed their Prime Video service, that you don't need Prime to be able to get it. And they've been securing actually a lot of really great anime that maybe even Retro Crush hasn't been able to get the rights on. And so at that point, I think it's actually a good thing for them that they worked out the Ava Rebuild movies, because once they have their anime fans going in to watch Ava Rebuild, what are they going to do next? They're going to go, okay, what other anime can we suggest to them? Oh, we have that one too. Trying to get people to notice, oh yeah, by the way, you don't have to pay like that $80 a year or I think it's more than that, but like you don't have
It's
to
more
pay that
100 it's
atrocious
100 a
amount.
year.
You now can pay like $10 a month like any other service.
Yeah. And I mean, business-wise, given that more and more companies are not even just looking at how anime companies are starting to cut out the middleman, given that we're starting to see more and more Western companies that didn't normally deal with anime,
Yeah.
getting into the anime market. I mean, we have already talked about Netflix and Amazon, but when you look at some of the offerings on HBO Max, Warner Brothers has also been kind of thinking, hey, let's get in on this a little bit for
Yeah.
ourselves because we realize there's a market here. Well, we're starting to reach the other side of that era of, okay, these anime distributors are no longer as necessary to the anime market as they once were. And that's not
Mhm.
even getting into the other ways people consume anime, whether through legitimate means or otherwise. It's kind of the case of the Funimations, the ADVs, the Harmony Golds, the Media Blasters. It's kind of the case of, hey, they're not as necessary for the anime market as they once used to be. And, well, those companies may want to start thinking, hey, we might need to start finding a different way to carve out a new niche. I know Media
Mhm.
Blasters kind of was ahead of the curve with all their different imprints for the various different niches where you had Anime Works, you had Kitty, you had Tokyo Shock. That might be the way that some of these other distributors might have to start going, is thinking, okay, let's go even more niche because, well, the mainstream pool is getting rather crowded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to add on to that, Romney, because you're right. The market is changing, and Funimation has certainly been receptive to that because Funimation is starting to sit on production committees for a lot of these anime now. Now, especially with a lot of the Aniplex exclusives, and
Yeah, that's one
now
of the things that's
and
benefited
Fruits,
from being
the
owned by
most
Sony.
recent fruit. Yeah, the most recent Fruits Basket too. They were also part of the production committee for. So
Yeah. So we
Yeah,
actually, so we
I
have an
agree.
interesting thing that I want to bring up here with our live chat, which is joining us for the podcast. RPX brings up, okay, Amazon is trying that, but they are effing up. And here's the thing, like while I agree with that, I think you could have said that to Netflix 2 or 3 years ago too, because remember, like their anime distribution was kind of crap for the longest time.
I mean, it still is,
It
considering
still kind
that
of is,
we
but I
still,
would say it's significantly improved compared.
well, their original stuff, they're good at distributing.
Yeah.
The licenses they picked up, they really, really need to improve. And I speak as the disgruntled Shaman King fan, and I'm sure Alex remembers the whole Little Witch Academia fiasco that
Little
they
Witch
created for
Academia.
themselves.
I still love the fact that when Inuyasha went to Netflix, it literally did not have an English dub in the States. And then I was told, like, if you had a VPN or whatever and you were watching in Australia, you could get an English dub, but nowhere else, which was so weird. Like, I'm not saying that Netflix has it all figured out, but I would say that Amazon is pretty much right now where Netflix was, where they're trying to be able to accommodate. Like, they've had so many initiatives go blow up in their face that now they're just kind of doing things a little bit simpler, and they're trying to at least point out to the audience, okay, we have a lesser amount service that you can go into and you can check out the anime. If you don't like it, then that's the way it goes. So I'm not saying that they've completely fixed it, but I will say that, you know, it's going to take a couple of bumps down the road before they completely fix the issue.
Yeah, I think you could say that also about any of the services. Like you could probably say that about Funimation. You could probably say that about Crunchyroll as well. Because I'm definitely sure that when they were first starting out, as far as like streaming was concerned, because we have to remember that most of the anime that a lot of us used to consume was based off of DVDs or whatever we can find on TV at the time. And when streaming started and it was fairly new, Funimation was definitely not the best when it came to streaming. Crunchyroll wasn't the best when it came to streaming. Crunchyroll still has issues when it comes to streaming anime. And when it comes to distributing it. So I feel like every company is going to have their issues with how they distribute a piece of, licensed content.
I will say,
It's never going to be perfect.
I will say that there's at least some hope for Amazon. Like, they did acquire something that is going to have some hype when that new movie comes out, and so at that point, that's why it's going to work out in their favor. Because at least those Ava fans will look at it and go, okay, now we're getting recommended some other stuff. We've got this for a month, so let's go ahead and check some of that stuff out. Go ahead, Shay.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, yeah, I agree, and it I have to agree with everyone else's point as well, that I think is also because of the market is changing. For so many of us, we always had heard that, anime was for children, it was for kids. It was, and at the time, especially like in the 90s, I'm sure that no other network wanted to deal with animation that came from Japan. It wasn't really well known. A lot of people didn't really know what it is. And I think now that anime is starting to dominate in so many different markets and so many different places, that so many places are like, okay, well, let's look into this a little bit more and see how well it will do on our streaming service.
Yep. So another interesting question that is being asked about this, and I've gotten it from a few listeners on it. So the last couple of Evas, or I want to say 3.0 got this, but I'm not sure about 1.0 and 2.0. Alex, elaborate on that one if I've got it wrong. But a lot of people are asking, because of this Amazon deal, are we actually going to see Eva in theaters? Because some are under the impression that it will do, quote, just as well as Kimetsu no Yaiba. And I don't know if I agree with that, but I don't know if the current movie industry is looking to have anime movies come out, at least right now, unless they're going to be super popular. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I don't see this meaning that you're going to get a physical release, like a physical theater release. Am I wrong about that?
Most I would
sure.
Yeah, most I would see. I don't know if anything has been announced, but if there is a theatrical run, it would be a very limited, like Fathom event sort of situation, kind of like what we got with the Demon Slayer movie. And I mean, Broly was kind of the outlier, but even then, it was still the Fathom event. It just so happened that Funimation paid for more days for it to be shown, and so if they do a theatrical release, we may get like a limited premiere in California, like what we've seen with some anime releases in the past. But beyond that, it would be a very limited engagement.
Yeah,
mostly because
I honestly don't think it's going to show up, because I don't know if the theaters want to take the risk.
It's also just more to the fact that, unlike Demon Slayer, Eva does not have as strong a mainstream appeal as it would have if this was like 20 or so years ago, around the heyday of End of Evangelion. Even by those metrics, Eva's never really been a major mainstream hit in the States when it comes to anime. In Japan, it has more of a mainstream appeal, but here in the States, Eva is still considered one of those more niche franchises.
Cult of the cult followings, yeah.
Yeah, I just looked it up, and it looks like it's not getting a theater release. It's saying it's just going straight to streaming. It says that for Japan, they're only releasing it they only release it in theaters in Japan. They're not releasing it in theaters here in the States. It's going straight to streaming.
Yeah, I don't think Amazon would have anything to say about that, and I just don't think it's like anybody's willing to take a risk.
I mean, Amazon has bankrolled theatrical releases of films they've had distribution rights for in the past.
Yeah, I just don't think they have here.
Yeah, they probably won't invest that much here because, like you said, the market isn't really there for it. I mean, again, I could see Amazon trying a limited release, but it would be like a one-night-only sort of showing, 2 nights if they do sub and dub like a lot of the other events, but beyond that, that would be it.
Yeah, pretty much. So, yeah, final thoughts on this one before we move into other anime-related news. I actually do agree with the live chat. So RPX is saying that mom and pop theaters will bring it in if they see that they're going to get something out of it. Absolutely. They will totally do it. They will find a way to be able to do it, probably through companies like Fathom, but that's how it's going to be done. This is not going to be driven by Amazon in that regard. This is going to be driven by fan demand. So that's me. I guess we pretty much covered this. So Alex, are you excited? You're going to get to see...
I'm very excited.
You're going to get to see Thrice Upon a Time in a little bit, and you can have fun with that while it breaks your brain.
Yeah.
Because that's my viewpoint on the matter. I'm done having my brain broke. So let's go ahead and move into the next story that we have, and this is actually kind of a coupling with another story that happened around E3 time. And so we have actually had officially announced 2 Square Enix anime adaptations being announced. One is for Legend of Mana. So if people are unsure about what that is, it's actually recently come out on PS4, Switch, and I think Xbox, where Legend of Mana is a PlayStation game that was popular. I don't think it was popular in the States, but it was popular in Japan. And so they're now going to be doing a anime series based off of Legend of Mana. Not only that, but we also might have a Final Fantasy IX animated series announced as well, which are both very interesting titles to take advantage of. I mean, you could have very interesting stories being told in those. I mean, I love the story of 9. As long as they don't change it, I think they'll be great. But I find it interesting, at least in the concept of the two art styles that you're working with. Both are very intriguing when it comes to their respective series. And now we're going to get anime adaptations. For Legend of Mana, it's going to be the Yokohama Animation Lab, and then for Final Fantasy IX, I think it's the same one. But let me.
No, it's a different one. It's a French studio called Cyber Group Studios.
That's right. Cyber Group Studios is going to be doing that one. I'm excited for this, strangely enough, just because of the unique animated styles that are going to be going into both of these shows.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious. They both lend themselves pretty well to animation, and in the case of Final Fantasy IX, I mean, considering the success of Kingsglaive as well as Advent Children, it's a case of, hey, there is a decent market share that would go for this, and given that 9, granted, it's a Final Fantasy game, but amongst most of the games that most people think of when they think Final Fantasy, it's still kind of one of the lesser known entries, which is a bit frustrating. But
well, and also a lot of the
rant.
hardcore fans, the hardcore fans, tend to think that that's when quote things got too anime for Final Fantasy is when 9 happened. I would tend to disagree personally, just because there's always been kind of at least a manga influence on a lot of it. But I mean, if we're pointing fingers, I'm a point fingers at 7 personally. But
I mean, in terms of its influences, a lot of people say, oh, it went to anime, kind of shows that lack of self-awareness. That's kind of how you can spot which Final Fantasy fans started with 7 and which ones started on the Nintendo consoles, because when there's like, oh, it went to anime, it's like, and not realizing, oh, it's a throwback title meant to be an homage to 1 through 6, all the games that paved the way for 7. And so it's one of those cases where it lends itself to the medium of animation very well, and even the art style is a lot more approachable compared to 1 through 6, because you're not having to work off of the very beautiful but very confusing Yoshitaka Amano artwork. Here, it's still designs done by Nomura, and so it lends itself more to...
No, 9, Amano did a lot of the illustration for it as well.
Yeah, but the main character designs were very much drawing from Nomura's influence.
I think Nomura had Zidane, but there were a couple of main characters that Amano did design. I think Freya is one of them.
Yeah, like Amano did design a fair bit of it, but when you look at the way even the instruction manuals and the way things are laid out in the game proper, you can tell they realize, okay, having the more approachable character designs is definitely a better approach, and that lends itself well to translating it to animation.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to see an example of animators trying their best and somewhat succeeding in translating Amano's style to animation, well, you've got Vampire Hunter D, because, well, a lot of the people talk about the challenges that came with it, and adding on to that, you also have the OVAs for the Heroic Legend of Arslan. This is before the Arakawa redo manga. This was like way before that. But point being, 9 lends itself pretty well, and the Mana series has taken a similar approach, where they kind of got away from... They were kind of in the nice intermediary between the Amano high fantasy inspired designs and the Toriyama family friendly fantasy designs with Dragon Quest. It's kind of nice in a nice middle slot. And so the Mana series also lends itself to it very well.
No, especially this title. Secret of Mana does have kind of that anime feel to it. I won't deny that. But as far as I am concerned, Legend of Mana was kind of the one that determined the more anime-esque style, because after that came Sword of Mana, which was basically the retelling of the first game, and that was about as intricate in art design as Legend was. So at that point, I think that both of those art styles are going to lend themselves to really great series. I'm interested how Legend is going to go, simply because a lot of that was like a create your own world kind of feature. I wonder how that's going to go. Like, how are we going to do that? Like, things just get... I mean, you're going to have to take that mechanic out, but are you basically going to say, like, instead of you can assemble the map however you want to, it's just pre-assembled? kind of thing. I'm at least interested in that one. Really quick, our live chat is basically, they're going straight for the Catboy audience. Disagree? I don't think Zidane has gotten a lot of love for it. Okay, maybe Kuja. I will give you that. Maybe Kuja. But I think the most desired out of, and it creeps me out to even say this, the most desired out of 9 is Eiko, isn't it? I don't know.
Well,
I don't know if I want to look.
Honestly, again, it's one of those cases where it's in a bit of a weird area in terms of what draws people. I mean, again, rules of the internet, if it exists, we all know the saying, but it's kind of one of those cases where, well, design-wise, even when you look at how characters like Kuja and Zidane look in their trance state, I mean, I don't necessarily think cat. I kind of thought it was more monkey-inspired because it basically is almost like Super
totally
Saiyan 4.
monkey-inspired. Yeah, well, because when I look at Zidane and maybe Kuja to an extent, although I really kind of more get a Sephiroth vibe from Kuja, Zidane feels like a Goku vibe to me, like a Son Goku kind of character. But Kuja equals just say no to Speedos. Yes. I think we can all agree about that. Yes. Just say no to Speedos.
Say no to Speedos.
Just say no to Speedos. Because Kuja loved himself some Speedos.
Well, I mean, most JRPG villains love the Speedos. I mean, let's face it.
Are you trying to make some statements about Sephiroth that I'm gonna regret later, Romney? Do I have to edit this out?
Well, I mean, there's a reason that a running gag in a.
It's possible.
There's a reason that there's. Well, there's a reason that there's a running gag in a lot of the Super Smash Brothers fan comics of Sephiroth being a bit of an exhibitionist. So it's one of those things where that sort of thing is just par for the course for most JRPG villains, at least most ones that are drawing influence from Final Fantasy specifically. I mean, you could probably find it in games like Star Ocean, Resonance of Fate. I mean, even the Tales series has a few notable villains that fall into that mold as well. So it's basically a trope of the genre at this point.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of because I'm like, we've been really positive about this, and Shay, unfortunately, I'm going to have to call upon you for this one. Let's get negative here. Do we see this going wrong, given the art styles that are going to be brought in here? I can see a few things wrong. I could totally see the anime objectification of Garnet. I could totally see that. I mean, she already technically was objectified by the game. I'm just saying she was pretty well endowed for a 16-year-old girl. But I don't know. I think there's plenty of potential for things to go wrong. Where are you at with it, Shay? Do you think that the unique art styles could be a problem?
I mean, maybe, but I think it really just depends on, like, if for you, the viewer, because some people will watch an anime and, like, not care about the animation as long as it's not super distracting or, like, just super out there to where they're like, I can't get into this, which, I've done that a few times with some anime, but then there's also some where some people are like, okay, the art style doesn't bother me. What bothers me the most is the content and whether or not the storyline is good or if it's just not flowing very well. So I think it's just going to depend on the viewer. But if it's like the art style of like that one particular character and, her potentially being objectified, I mean, maybe some people might have an issue with it, but there's also some 16-year-old girls that are pretty well endowed, I guess, is the best way for me to put it. So, I mean, somebody is going to have that body type. So I don't think there's anything to really be upset about. So it's possible.
I'm just curious. Have you played either of these games?
No.
Okay.
I haven't played either one of these games. But
so it's been forever since I played Legend of Mana. I'm trying to convince my wife to play the remastered version so that she can get into it because it's kind of like a beat 'em up. So at that point, like, you can have a lot of fun with that. I think 9 is going to have a good enough story to be able to do it. I think there's a lot of continuity there. The only one I can't speak to is Legend of Mana because, again, I haven't played it in years, and I do think there was like multiple endings because they did multiple plot lines for the various characters you can unlock. So I might be wrong about this, but I think Legend of Mana is the one that would have what you're basically bringing up, that it would be the continuity would be an issue, a big issue with that game.
Yeah.
I don't think so
Another
much with 9.
factor, another factor to consider as well is the intended audience of these animations. Are they going to try to tailor these to the grown-up fans of these games, or are they going to try to skew a bit younger? With Final Fantasy IX, I see them trying to skew younger because, again, the world of Final Fantasy IX and all of the trappings lend itself well for a more younger skewing show. I can definitely see it kind of going more mainstream shonen sort of audience, but with more of a fantasy flair. Not quite like Black Clover level, but I can definitely see them trying to go
totally
more
do
for
that, yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see 9 skewing younger towards its audience, especially given that would liberate it from some of the, for lack of a better term, baggage that may carry with it by trying to cater to the more adult audience. This would be more of, hey, let's just retell this story, get people interested in this game and in this world, rather than trying to placate the established fan base, which, again, both sides carry their fair share of risks. But again, 9 is in that nice sweet spot where it could kind of go one way or the other. So I see them skew younger, which means we wouldn't necessarily have to worry about the objectification with certain characters, because I remember even in the games that was never really anything that really happened in Final Fantasy IX. I mean, I know that's something that comes up in the Bravely series a fair bit, but 9 never really had any gags even on that level. I mean,
gags
maybe
as in,
with
like, sexy time gags,
yeah,
like Bravo Bikini. No, it didn't. But I was gonna say, like, that actually will play into it, because not only are you going to have those cool action moments, but there's plenty of humor in 9 as well. Is it going to be on the level of that? No, it's not. In fact, in a lot of cases, I actually like the humor just because it's kind of bumbling. Like, for example, if they try to make Steiner a serious character, I'm out. Because Steiner is anything but serious in that whole thing. He is basically Alfred with no experience and a big sword. All right?
Yeah.
He needs to be the bumbling buffoon. And then you have Beatrix come out and you see, like, how much he basically has a Lupin crush for her. All right? You know, you need to go those directions, but there are still serious elements that could bring it in. I think a lot of the fight scenes that you could be doing are going to also be awesome, but you got to keep that humor in. You got to. Like, it's Dragon Ball level humor, except with less panties.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. And I think that's another key factor there is that, hopefully, and
Alex,
considering
you're
that
grounded. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Romney, but I'm checking the live. Alex, you're grounded.
Come on.
You're grounded. No Tom Jones in the chat.
Yeah,
brought it up.
well, in the case with 9, it's one of those cases where the sky's kind of the limit with that particular series, and looking the fact that the Legend of Mana animation announcement has a specific subtitle, we don't even know if it's going to be a direct adaptation, or if it could be a side story,
and
or even a prequel.
That might be their answer, is that there is no, like, straight up continuity of the game, so we're going to, like, sidestep it and do our own.
Yeah, so it's probably in a sort of Legend of the Crystals situation, like, well, with Legend of the Crystals and Final Fantasy V, where they figured, hey, because Final Fantasy V famously had multiple endings depending on which of your party members were still alive after the final battle. And so it's a case where, it's probably a similar case with Legend of Mana. They're probably just going to tell a separate story in the same universe, probably tie it to the games because, well, this is both meant to be an anniversary commemoration project, as well as, generate interest in the Mana series. So it's one of those cases of, okay, it's a separate story in the same universe, probably some callbacks, maybe some characters, but that's probably the approach Mana is taking, whereas Final Fantasy IX, that could even be a similar case. So, well, is 9 going to be a straight retelling of the games, or are they going to go a similar route of, we're going to use the games as a blueprint, but kind of go our own direction or explore different aspects of this world that the game doesn't really allow you to, or look at things in a different way? I mean, when you look at what Netflix did with Castlevania, that is also equally a possibility.
It's possible, yeah. And I agree with you. It doesn't necessarily need to go there, but here's the thing, with 9, you don't necessarily need to adhere to that continuity. The world itself is so much of a character in 9 that you can go in a lot of different directions and still be okay with it. Like, you don't need to go, like, plot point for plot point in that regard. With Mana, I think that that it actually might benefit for them to be able to go down that road and do a sidestep and say like, okay, we're gonna do our own continuity with this and see what we can actually get out of it. The next question that is gonna kind of wrap up the story, because I'm gonna bring it to Alex and then I'm gonna bring it to everybody else. Do we think that this is going to, if these are successful, Alex? There's a lot of Square Enix properties that would lend themselves well to an anime adaptation. If these two do well, is it possible we could see other anime adaptations being done? And if so, which ones?
If they're successful, I could probably see other Final Fantasy properties get picked up. Either maybe some of the really early games or maybe some of their side games could see anime.
We need a Strangers
takes
of
on them.
Paradise anime just so that we can have the main character screaming chaos every fourth word. Too much? Chaos! Okay, I'm good now. I'm good.
I mean, we already are seeing that a little bit. I mean, I know most recently we got the release of the novelizations of 1, 2, and 3, as well as the side story novels for 7 and 13 too.
Yes.
So there's definitely a lot of angles that could open up, but it's also a case of we don't really need to think, oh, if this is successful, well, Brotherhood, Kingsglaive, 15's kind of proven that multimedia franchising can work a second time, provided you're not, shamelessly trying to remake 7.
So there was a caveat to the reason why I picked on Alex here at the very beginning. And unfortunately, Alex, you didn't mean it, or you didn't meet it. So unfortunately, I have to beat the crap out of you the next time I see you. Because they said if the first adaptation that doesn't come to your mind is Chrono Trigger, you have failed and you must turn in your gamer card and Drac has to beat the crap out of you.
Came to mind, but I kind of doubt they would do Chrono Trigger.
It's not going to happen.
No.
Like, full stop, it's not going to happen.
The other one that I'll bring up is our live chat has Parasite Eve. That would be great. That's not happening.
No, Parasite Eve, I'm sorry to be the one to crush everyone's dreams. The Chrono series is not going to happen just because many of the people that were behind the Chrono series have since left Square Enix, and getting Toriyama on board, given that he's already, heavily involved with Super, that's not happening. Maybe if they try to get the same crew behind the Dragon Quest Adventures of Dai remake, even then that's a stretch.
I mean, I've heard that
they wouldn't even need to get Toriyama
crew has been approached with a remake of Chrono Trigger, because they studied a lot of Chrono Trigger to make I Am Setsuna. So at that point, maybe do it that way. But yeah, I don't. That's one of those golden idols that if you don't do it right, it's gonna suck. And I don't know if I want you to touch it.
Yeah, and with Parasite Eve, full stop. From what I've read and researched, apparently there is still a fair bit of bad blood between Hideaki Senna, the author of the original novel that the whole franchise is based on, and Square Enix. So unless they, get back in Senna's good graces, don't expect to see anything related to Parasite Eve, unless if for some reason someone at Square Enix decides to have some sort of aneurysm, be like, let's do an adaptation of Third Birthday.
An anime adaptation of, because I like that Alex brought this up, the going like the earlier games. An anime adaptation of 4 might actually be really cool to look at. And I almost want to say 6, because 6 lends itself to a lot of world building. I think if you got the right studio involved, a 6 anime would be really cool. But you have to have the right studio. And I can't even begin to tell you at the beginning, off the top of my head, like who I would put in charge of 6. 4, I would definitely, part of me wants to go for the My Hero Academia crew, but I think also...
Bones.
So I think also, so Bones, or the crew that is doing Shield Hero, or crap, I can't remember which one it is, but... I got reincarnated as a slime, but I might be wrong. The studios that do those could do love for 4, but 6 that's a tougher sell, in my opinion. So I don't even know where you'd start there. And bottom line, already we can already rule these out because we know what's going to happen. Hitman, Avengers, Tomb Raider, all those.
Yeah, like Hitman Avengers, that's a whole separate licensing issue with Disney, and there already is a fair number of Avengers anime in Japan that we have yet to see stateside. Hitman, maybe as an OVA, but even then, we've already got 2 live-action movies, and they were moderately received, but not well enough. I mean, one franchise that Square Enix put out that I can see them trying to do something with, it would have to be like a mini-series, and that would probably be Front Mission, because I can see them trying to do a Front Mission
I forgot
OVA.
that they had that. I forgot they had that, so that might be a way to go.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the wake of, I can't remember the name of it. It was the spin-off that they got the artist for Metal Gear to do the cover art for.
I know
Lost
the one you're
Mission.
talking about, but I can't remember who.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can't remember the name of the game, but it was basically the Front Mission spinoff that wanted you to forget that it was a Front Mission spinoff for some strange reason. And so that franchise is in a very weird area that even if they were to do a Front Mission tie-in, it would have to be like very much a short OVA series for the purpose of testing the waters to see if there's still fans of the franchise, which there are. And as for other lesser-known Square Enix franchises, honestly, it's hard to say. I'm literally looking at my game shelf, seeing what else they've got. But honestly,
Furry Fencer Musashi.
Damn it, Alex!
I mean, that I could see.
That was my suggestion, was Brave Fencer Musashi.
I'd love to see that.
Yes.
I mean, plus another factor we need to consider, we don't really know how, at least I don't really know, Alex could probably correct me on this, we don't know how well received The World's End With You anime was, especially given that we've also got the sequel coming out soon.
Out yet.
Well, I thought it was already airing because I'd seen
No, because Andrea is waiting for it. She's excited, and I don't think it's come out yet because she's excited for that one as well as whatever Disney Plus does with the Kingdom Hearts series they're talking about.
Yeah, which that's also going to be another thing that'll be a deciding factor, because in addition to 9 and Mana, we've got the World's Ends With You series coming out, which that could also make or break a lot of different things. And Kingdom Hearts, whatever Disney's got planned with it, I would argue, and I'm probably going to get smacked for saying this utter sacrilege, nobody needs to be pulled off Kingdom Hearts. It has gone way too off the rails. Someone needs to step in and pull this in.
Right now. He needs to go have a nice vacation. It's actually one of the things that I'm very happy that Nomura is still overseeing the overall project, but Kitase has been taken off of FS7 Remake because he was the only director for the first game. And now they're handing it off to, I think his name is Yamauchi, the guy who did the intermission. He's doing part 2. So at that point, I think that was a good idea because you're relying too much on the same people over and over and over. And those people need vacations really bad. The only one I would say that doesn't is probably Nojima, and it's only because he has had vacations in between.
Yeah, and so in terms of what the make or break success of these 3 anime series could portend for further Square Enix adaptations, it's kind of up in the air, especially given that we don't really know what they're planning, if they're planning any sort of multimedia expansion for 16, which they've also been working on.
That's true.
Considering how successful doing the anime tie-ins for 15 have been in terms of basically hyping up and building up the game, I can see them replicating that sort of formula, thinking, okay, rather than trying to have everything out the gate, let's just release these smaller scale
16,
things.
I think Strangers of Paradise is also going to get one. Because they're going to want as much tie into it and as much hype going into it.
Yeah. And again, with something like Strangers of Paradise and 16, I see them doing what they did with 15. Yeah. Limited OVAs, limited like one-offs, not anything that would be like an ongoing series.
Yeah.
Just stuff that their express purpose is to hype you up for the games. And so, in terms of what other franchises, I mean, there's a lot of franchises Square Enix could pull from, even some of the Eidos library if they are so inclined. Mm-hmm. But it remains to be seen.
There's tons of games in the Square Enix library that they can pull to. The only franchise I'm going to say that is out of the way is probably going to be Dragon Quest, because at that point you're gonna want Toriyama involved in that to some extent.
And plus they're already doing that with the remake of The Adventures of Dai, as well as some other spin-off titles that have been working on. So it's kind of a they're already doing it with Dragon Quest. I mean, there was stuff they have already announced with it. And so with Dragon Quest, that's almost a guarantee at this point. I mean, even in Japan, there's been like tie-in manga for each of the games to like I mentioned, specifically to promote the game. So it's one of those cases where that's almost a given at this point.
See,
All
but
right.
I want to talk about that is you don't really need Toriyama for any of the games he's worked on because you would already ideally have the draft sheets that he
You
made.
do
So
technically have a lot of people who can emulate Toriyama's style.
all you would,
Um,
yeah. I mean, almost always when an anime become like when a manga or something gets adapted, when they base off of those character designs, the studio always has their own internal
I guess
character
so.
designer that they bring in to adapt those designs. So
All
you don't
right.
really need the original designer.
Shay, what Square Enix franchise would you like to see get an anime adaptation? We've mentioned a few. I don't know how much of a Square Enix fan you are, so take it away. What do you think should get one?
I only really know about like Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts mostly. And
Okay.
since Disney is already doing a Kingdom Hearts series, definitely, not that because they're already working on that. I guess probably like maybe another Final Fantasy.
Okay. So that I
Yeah.
mean, in all honesty, I do think that if 9 is successful, you will get some other Final Fantasy titles being considered for it. Whether or not they're the ones that should be, we can't answer that. Because I do think that if Nomura is involved with any of this, he is going to push 7 down everybody's throat. Because he loves 7. 7 is his baby, kind of thing, even though it kind of isn't.
Yeah, I mean, another factor we also forgot to consider is that Amazon also does have their Final Fantasy 14 based series that they've also been
This
working
is true.
on. That's
Yeah.
another factor as well, is that Square's got a fair number of irons already in the fire.
They really do. I just really quick want to see if there are any that we have left out. Really quick for the live chat, we have a suggestion that Final Fantasy VI needs Studio UFO Table. I do not know who that is. Alex, do you?
I know.
Okay.
They did Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba, so
Okay, so maybe that would work. And then also, does
they do
Square
all the
own Terra
fate.
Enigma? I believe they do. I believe they own. I think it was it an Enix property? I think
It
Terra
was
Enigma.
Enix published, but somebody else developed it, so I don't even know if
They
they
might have
actually
the
own it.
rights then, because I remember Enix has a lot of that stuff taken care of. Let's see. So they also need to put Octopath Traveler Team on the Front Mission franchise. Is there even a reason to bring back Front Mission? I thought it died in a blaze of glory. I thought it was unsuccessful. Period.
I mean, that spin-off that I mentioned earlier, that pretty much, again, the Front Mission spin-off that wants you to forget that it's a Front Mission spin-off, because I can't remember the title, kind of has put things in a very sticky situation for the Front Mission franchise, but it still has its fans, and it's kind of one of those franchises that if they were to basically do kind of a retro style remake, much like the Adventures of Mana remake that came out on the PS Vita, that could definitely revitalize it, since Front Mission is one of those tactical franchises that if you're in those circles that tends to play Final Fantasy Tactics, there's a bit of overlap with those same fans also being Front Mission fans, since they're basically both tactical role-playing games, just Front Mission being more hard science fiction. And so with Front Mission, especially given that we're already having the Octopath Traveler people working on Project Triangle Strategy, which is also a strategy game, them working on Front Mission, not beyond the realm of possibility, provided that they give it to someone and don't do so much meddling to the point where it loses sight of what it's supposed to be. Because that's what happened with this is just a thing. I can't remember the title, so that's just what I'm calling it. The Front Mission spinoff that wants you to forget that it's a Front Mission spinoff.
The two I am going to say really quick, and we'll end on this. The two that shouldn't be touched. 2 franchises that shouldn't be touched. And people are going to get mad at me for one of them. Do not do anything based off of... Crap, what's it called? It's a... Life is Strange. Life is Strange is already its own thing. It doesn't need an anime adaptation. The games pretty much explain themselves. And second, no Legacy of Kain. No anime Legacy of Kain until there are fucking games. No. Bad Square Enix. They'll probably do Legacy of Kain because that would be like right in the anime wheelhouse.
Well,
and it shouldn't be.
I can see it working depending on how they approach it. If it's just a straightforward adaptation of the earlier games, I can see a studio like Madhouse doing it because it would very much be on brand, since Madhouse did work on Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust and the Marvel anime, which included Blade. That's something that would definitely be in their style. But if they try to kind of do their own thing and try to basically make a knockoff of the Castlevania anime, well, then
That's what
that'll
I'm
pretty
worried
much
that
be
they do. And
yeah,
so that's why I'm
which
saying no.
yeah, which the market there is already kind of crowded with the Castlevania anime and the forthcoming Blade projects that Marvel has announced.
All right. So let's go ahead and move on into the next story that we have. This one's going to be a little one just because there's not really a whole lot to go off of, but it's going to be one of those times where we tell Alex to go make himself a sandwich because it's fighting game talk, at least a little bit. So NetherRealm Studios recently, I want to say this week or last week, shocked the world by doing this the first time I think ever in a fighting game's history. They announced on Twitter, because they get such demand for put this character in MK11, put this character in MK11, put that character in MK11. They officially announced on Twitter, NetherRealm is now focusing on its next project, and after more than 2 years of supporting Mortal Kombat 11, DLC for the game, including characters, has come to an end. The reason I say that this is the first time in fighting games is because I don't think, like, I actually had to go back a little bit and see if I could find official announcements when support for a game was going to end. Because fighting game companies like Capcom, they weren't doing that. So I actually wonder, like, this is an interesting thing for NetherRealm to do, but it also does get me wondering, as well as our listeners wondering, what's next? What's the new unannounced project that they're working on? I know a few people are going to bounce things off with Injustice, because that's kind of how things have been going. They did Mortal Kombat 9, and then I think it was the first Injustice game, and then they did Mortal Kombat X, and then they did Injustice 2, and now they've done MK11. But there's been such turmoil over at Warner Brothers, I don't know if they can do an Injustice 3 at this point, because I don't know if they're going to be owned by Warner Brothers, much less whoever owns Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I mean, it could go one of two ways, since we know that Warner Brothers is planning, or at least, I don't know if this has been confirmed, but there has been a lot of speculation that Warner Brothers has an interest in doing an Injustice animated project,
Yes.
given the success that the homegrown animated films, including Scorpion's Revenge, have been having a lot of success on HBO Max. And so I do see Warner Brothers kind of thinking, hey, let's take what people like about our DC animated films and just give Injustice that same treatment. And so I can see what NetherRealm and Warner Brothers, I can see Warner Brothers definitely rethinking, okay, well, the Mortal Kombat film and the animated films did well enough for us to get people to pay for HBO Max. Let's hold on to Warner Brothers Games and NetherRealm Studios a little bit longer, see if there's a little bit more potential here. And so a new Injustice is not necessarily outside the realm of possibility, especially given that Warner Brothers and DC are showing an interest in adapting the franchise to other media beyond the games and the comics that we were already getting.
Yeah, I think as long as they maintain that partnership, then Injustice 3 is possible, or maybe even, like you were saying, because they want to do something with Injustice. I've heard an Injustice movie, and I've heard an Injustice animated series they want to do. So at that point, you could do that, but you have to maintain both the rights to Warner Brothers stuff, as DC stuff, as well as NetherRealm Studios. What do we think the chances are that it's Mortal Kombat 12? I doubt it. I really do. I don't think that they maybe have gone to the drawing table with Mortal Kombat 12, but I don't think that they have any ideas just yet for that. What do we think that it's possible that it's MK12?
I'd say it's equally likely, considering that, for lack of a better term, we're now entering the next generation with the new Xbox and the new PlayStation console on the market now. I can definitely see them thinking, okay, we need to start putting together the next big fighting game for this new generation, because that's what gave Mortal Kombat the edge when we were getting the PS4 and Xbox One, was, hey, let's release the Mortal Kombat all across most of these systems. That's kind of what gave them the edge over Street Fighter, and it's an edge that Capcom has yet to really reclaim. So I can see NetherRealm thinking, okay, we've got these new consoles, we know how they work, let's start working on the next big Mortal Kombat for these new consoles before Capcom does.
It's possible, because we do know that, according to leaks, that Street Fighter 6 is being worked on. So at that point, it might be in NetherRealm's best interest to do an MK12 just to kind of combat with it. Shay, where are you standing with this? Do you want to see a new Injustice game, or do you want to see Mortal Kombat 12?
I haven't played the Injustice series, so it's hard for me to say. So, I mean, I'd be okay with a new Injustice, and then if they decide that there's hope in doing a Mortal Kombat 12, I'd be okay with that too. Just from me reading the article, it seems like this is something that they've done before.
Yes.
So
they
it
do
just
have
seems like it's
pattern to
just a
themselves.
pattern. Yeah, it seems like it's just a pattern that they've done before. So I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they did a new Injustice and maybe do another Mortal Kombat. But I feel like give Mortal Kombat some time. I don't.
Yeah. They
It's
need to
gonna
go
be a
back
while.
they need to go back to the drawing table for that and see like what can we do to improve upon what we improved upon in MK11. How can we make it bigger? How can we make it better? Kind of thing. And I think that'll take some time. But you technically could have been having an Injustice team working during this and saying like, okay, how can we improve on Injustice 2? And say, okay, what other heroes can we bring in? Kind of thing. I don't know. It's a very interesting thing. However, I really do hope that I know I've been putting an emphasis on the Twitter announcement here, but this is definitely something that fighting game companies need to do from here on, because then at that point, I know a few companies look at that as going, oh, well, we're just going to kill our fighting game because everybody's going to know that there's no more support going for it. I instead think it actually kind of builds the hype. It actually builds hype to say, okay, well, what are we going for next? Because the example that I'm going to give here is Arc System Works just barely released Guilty Gear Strive, and it's fairly obvious that Dragon Ball FighterZ is not going to be getting another season of content. So at that point, I know that there's been a huge buzz talking about either Dragon Ball FighterZ 2 or being able to secure the rights to another anime and doing a Dragon Ball FighterZ of that anime. And the one that a lot of people tend to bring up is either My Hero Academia or Naruto being the next one that they do. And it would actually be cool if you basically said, okay, well, we are ending this because we're working on our next big project. And so at that point, everybody can go, what's the next big project? And you just slowly build hype for years until you finally unveil it. That's my opinion on the matter, but I at least want that said. I want to see some fighting game companies start doing this. I think it would especially benefit companies like Capcom to do it. That being said, there really isn't too much to get into on this one. Alex, do you have any thoughts on this, or are you too busy eating your sandwich?
Too busy eating my sandwich.
We need to educate you in fighting games, my friend. No, I'm kidding. So I just have to ask this question really quick. Is there any way we could avoid the next story? Do we really have to? You'll make Drac very sad if we have to talk about this story. The listeners already made Drac sad for suggesting it.
Well, I mean, we may as well just get it out of the way. Treat it like a Band-Aid, just rip it off in one fell swoop.
I hate it when Romney makes sense. So this one has been sent to me for quite a while now, because whenever there is any news Transformers movie related, my audience says, let's screw around with Drac. Transformers 7 has been revealed. It is Transformers Rise of the Beasts. So not only are we going to have the G1 Autobots and Decepticons, but we are also looking at the Maximals and the Predacons from Beast Wars. If people remember the 90s CG series, we don't know too much about it yet. I have not been able, I've heard double talk on whether or not Bay's even in the writing room for it, so I don't know.
I don't think he's involved at all.
I
Because
don't.
it sounds like they're rebooting the whole thing and they're starting fresh.
You say that, Alex, and then you get my hopes up, and then 2 years later, Michael Bay's the public speaker for them, and I'm like, no! So I'm just saying, like, you could be right. Just don't jinx it, man. Just don't jinx it.
Looks like it's following on the heels of the Bumblebee movie, which was without Bay.
Don't get me excited. No, I can't do excitement for this anymore. It hurts me. So yes, Rise of the Beast is going to be happening. I have not heard if they're going. This is another thing that they're not sure on, is whether or not they're going to continue with the plot line that Bay was building up in Last Night. I don't think they've even figured out their script so far, and one of the reasons I can say so is they haven't entirely figured out who is going to be in this series. They've unveiled a few, but I will say right off the bat, you haven't really unveiled a lot of Decepticons / Predacons that are going to be making their way into it. All that they've really announced is, okay, Optimus Prime's going to be in there, because why not? We're also going to have Bumblebee in there, because it doesn't make sense for him to not be in there. They've also announced RC, because they basically want to build on the Transformers Prime hype of that version of RC, not the, what was it called? Revenge of the Fallen RC, which was weird. But then they've also announced that Optimus Primal, Air Razor, another female character, and Rhinox will be in the movie, but they failed to announce any of the more popular Maximals, such as Cheetor, Rat Trap, and Dinobot being in it. So, The other one that's kind of weird is that I know that they do this with some of these movies. They go to the comics for a lot of their characters. And so one of the Decepticons supposedly here is going to be a character by the name of Nightbird. She's got 2 to 3 different origin stories, basically. But she's going to be like a Decepticon ninja, roughly. Thoughts on this? Like, where are you guys standing with the Transformers movies? I saw Bumblebee, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. But if this is officially going to be Transformers 7 and following the lame-ass plot that Bay was creating, I'm out. I'm out, especially since it's my favorite franchise. It's Beast Wars.
Honestly, I stopped caring about Transformers after the 3rd film, because it was just one of those, okay, this is gonna do its own thing. I'm done with these movies.
Wrong.
So
you weren't wrong.
Yeah, and so as for because I mean, I grew up with Beast Wars, so I understand where you're coming from. I'm not as much of a diehard fan, but it does have a plaintive nostalgia for me. But at the same time, I mean, this is Viacom we're dealing with. The bar is really, really low for Viacom for me at this point. I mean, it would have to be like better than better, but given that they're also really, really trying to make all Spark Pictures into a thing, it's kind of one of those, yeah, of course they're gonna do Beast Wars. I mean, it's Hasbro, they've got the license, sure, why not?
You want to know one thing that also disheartens a lot of Transformers fans? So you're bringing back Peter Cullen to play Optimus Prime, which is awesome because we love that voice. But they haven't contacted Gary Chalk to come and reprise Optimus Primal. Instead, they're going with Ron Perlman. Now, I like Ron Perlman, people. But Ron Perlman has played Optimus Primal before. He doesn't match. He doesn't match the character. He makes Optimus Primal sound like Batman, which is not how he's supposed to sound. It looks really dumb. He sounds like he's supposed to be a foot taller than he is. And I love Ron Perlman, and he's a great actor. He's a great voice actor. I know why they did this, because he did the Machinima series as Optimus Primal, but you needed to contact Gary Chalk. And Gary Chalk has said, for the record, he would have no problem coming back to voice that character if it was in one of these movies. And it makes me cry inside, because it probably means they're also not going to contact David Kaye to voice Megatron. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they do have a director attached, Stephen Caple Jr. of Creed 2.
Yes, the Creed 2 director is attached to this. But Shay, talk me off the ledge here. Talk me off the ledge. Am I just worrying for the sake of worrying? Is there reason to be worried?
I don't think there's any reason to be worried just yet. I mean, I would wait till they were released a trailer, just going based off of who they've casted so far. It's hard because we haven't seen anything yet. So I would hold judgment until I see the first trailer. I mean, me personally, I didn't mind the Transformer movies, but I also stopped really kind of watching once they put Mark Wahlberg in it, and then I was kind of like, okay, I don't really follow this anymore.
You guys do the
What kind of Mark, huh?
I mean, I don't mind Mark Wahlberg at all. I think he's great. I just
the Marky Mark
preferred
movies are just
Shia.
bad.
I preferred Shia LaBeouf being the main like protagonist, I guess, when the Transformers movies, because that's when I first really started like watching them, was when he was the main character, kind of, pretty much. So when they introduced Mark Wahlberg, my first inclination was like, where did Shia LaBeouf go? Like, so like after that, I was kind of like I watched it, but
Viewers, do
Mark
not get mad at
Wahlberg,
Shay. She does not
but
understand the power of Shia LaBeouf.
for me, Mark Wahlberg is not an action star. Me personally, he doesn't fit an action star potential
Do you know
compared
how we're
to anybody
sure
else
of
they
this?
could have gotten.
Max Payne. That's all we need to say. That's how we know Mark
Yeah.
Wahlberg isn't an action star. He's not.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I
I
will
think with Shia LaBeouf, like with him, like it fit because he was like a kid in high school at the time. He didn't know what he was doing. So he had the whole quirky high school kid thing going on where like he got this car, he doesn't understand what any of this is going on. So it fit because he was extremely awkward. And it fit, but like with Mark Wahlberg, with him trying to be this like action star in the film, it just didn't click for me. Like I just didn't like it. And then
Yeah.
the Bumblebee movie, I thought was actually pretty good. I like that it was more like a prequel, like origin prequel story for Bumblebee. So I think I was okay with that. But with Mark Wahlberg in it, I just wasn't a fan.
Yeah. I will say this: he may not be an action star, but I can see Wahlberg being in action comedies, not being a serious action star, but being in like in an action comedy. Like that's more his niche, or at least that's the niche he kind of tried to market himself in with Pain and Gain, which, for lack of a better term, that was basically Michael Bay trying to do his own version of Fargo and failing horribly.
Yes.
But it's one of those things where I would argue that Transformers, at least with the live action films, is having a bit of an identity crisis for the reasons Shay kind of described. I mean, you lost your main character, or at least your main human audience proxy character with Shia LaBeouf. They tried to reestablish a new one with Bumblebee, but at this point, they're kind of not really sure what they're wanting to do with it. I mean, if it was under Universal, there would be an obvious direction they could take Transformers, but because it's Paramount, they don't have this as an option. I'm just like, why not just cross over Transformers with Fast and the Furious? I mean, Fast and the Furious has gotten so ridiculous, you might as well.
Vin Diesel, we must join together to save the Allspark from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Okay, dude.
That would
No, that's-
just be too off the rails.
I mean, that's when you just have Ultron being just like, not Ultron. What's the name of the giant planet one that was Orson
Unicron.
Welles? Unicron, yes. That's when you have Unicron like intimidating the planet and just like, I am more powerful than the Earth. And you just have Dom Toretto come out and it's like, nothing's stronger than family.
Pretty much.
God. See, this
But
is
yeah,
why I'm worried about the whole Transformers 7, because Transformers 7 indicates to me that they're going to continue that plot line, which was going to reveal Unicron. And no, I do not think these movies have deserved Unicron. Because that's a big step, and especially the way that they were going to do it, it just wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work, and Unicron was going to fail hard. But that's me. Sorry, Shay, I keep interrupting.
No, it's fine. No harm done. But yeah, I mean, I will hold judgment until I see a trailer for this recent iteration for Transformers. I will hold all my opinions until then. I'm just glad Mark Wahlberg is not in it so far as we know of. That just makes me really happy. To me, the only movie that he actually played pretty well in that I enjoyed it was the M. Night Shyamalan movie,
The Happening.
The Happening. That is the only movie that I will say I
Shyamalan
actually
ding dong.
thought he was a pretty good fit in. I'm glad he's not in the Transformers movies anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe he was too busy talking to plants and didn't get any of Paramount's phone calls.
I will
and
still
plus
stick
he
to my
didn't
guns that
have
you
to do anything like actiony. Like he just had to be himself. Like he didn't have to jump off any buildings, didn't have to run after anything. He just was a regular person. So it's like, don't be an action star, Mark Wahlberg.
I'm still gonna stick to my guns. I know that some people get mad at me when I say this because for them the human plot is what matters in these movies. But I'm sticking to my guns here. There's enough lore, and Bay never realized this, and maybe the Bumblebee director got it. Travis Knight, he kind of got it. You can do a plot based around the robots themselves, and it would still work, and you can make the humans a secondary character, which ultimately they are. And it still works, but I know that they're going to put somebody in there to be the Shia LaBeouf of that given movie, and I just really wish they'd focus on the actual robots who have character and traits to be able to utilize in that regard. But
Colin here, the human character is going to be Gilbert Gottfried playing some weird zoologist.
Oh god. And then they're going to bring back Devastator, and he's going to make a bunch of ball jokes.
Well, I mean, at least if it's coming from Gilbert Gottfried, at least it'll be entertaining sounding.
That's what's sad. It would be more entertaining. All right, so moving on into the next story, because I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head here. Until we get more information, which you guys will bring up to me, we can't really judge anything based off of it because we don't know too much. I'm worried that they're going to bring the Beast Wars canon into it, but there's not really a whole lot that I can do about that given moment. So in that case, really quick, I hope Shay does not mind here, but we have unfinished business from our E3 episode. And the reason I know that it's unfinished business is what people don't know is me and Romney were actually talking about doing this trailer. And then we ran out of time and we weren't really able to do that. And so that was really irritating to me. But then somebody reached out to me the following weekend and said, why didn't you cover this trailer? And I'm pretty sure Romney heard me off in the distance because he heard a giant which basically came from further south than where he lives. So that being said, if you guys don't mind, we're going to go ahead and do one quick trailer roundup in regards to Dynasty Warriors, because this got announced and I want to give it its fair shake. Romney, are you ready?
Yep.
All right, here we go.
以後丟少條命就係將軍嘅。
來者斬殺，免陣！
睇嚟，天下英雄只有你同我。
I don't know what to say. It's epic. It feels like a Dynasty Warriors movie. Romney, say something.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much what can be said. It basically looks like Dynasty Warriors. Now, granted, people are going to point it out in the chat, so I'll be the first to point it out because I'm always the first to point these things out, apparently. Dynasty Warriors is based on a pre-existing novel,
Yes.
Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Arguably, it's kind of considered one of the four great Chinese novels alongside Outlaws on the Marsh, Journey to the West. I can't remember what the fourth one is. And so it's one of those stories that has been adapted many, many times. And so I look at this, I'm just like, okay, this is a classic case of Netflix taking an Asian property and giving it to precisely the right people to adapt
No,
it. Which,
yeah, this is like Crouching Tiger but on steroids, and that's exactly what it needed to be.
yeah, I mean that's pretty much what it is. And honestly, I still have yet to check it out because my Netflix queue is quite crowded as of late. But I saw that trailer, and many people may realize is that what if you were listening to our E3 episode and listened to the pre-show, I literally had to put in our group chat where we plan our agenda. I was like, was anyone going to tell me that this was happening, or was I supposed to find this myself while
No,
looking?
yeah,
I literally
you found it for us, and then a couple of days later, I started getting emails like, why didn't you guys talk about the Dynasty Warriors movie? I was like,
Yeah, the ironic thing is I happened to be searching YouTube because I wanted to listen to Lou Boo's theme, and then I saw one of the results was, oh, Dynasty Warriors trailer, and I thought, oh, probably a fan trailer, but then I saw Netflix Asia, and I'm just like,
yeah,
okay, this is a thing. Because I've been faked out by a bunch of fake trailers on YouTube because, well, people are scummy.
yeah,
But,
I'd have no problem watching this and doing a review on it, in all honesty, Romney. That looked really good compared to what I was worried that it was going to look like. So
yeah, I mean, it pretty much is exactly what it needs to be, a Chinese-produced action film with a slightly beefier budget. That's pretty much all you really need. And granted, given how complicated Romance of the Three Kingdoms is as a story, many people may wonder, oh, why are they focusing on this and this? Like, well,
not only
the story
that,
itself.
but Dynasty Warriors is such a, like, it's not even a serious adaptation of it, because one of the things I liked in this trailer was the fact that, you know, people would do their Muso attacks, and you'd have hundreds and hundreds of people in the air, because that's what would happen in the game. So so does it need to be accurate? In my opinion, no. Maybe the events need to be, like, accurate, but it needs to be outlandish like Dynasty Warriors is.
Well, to be fair, the whole concept of the Muso attacks isn't really too much of a betrayal of the source material, because the original novel, I mean, yeah, there's the actual history of the Three Kingdoms, and then Romance of the Three Kingdoms, there is embellishment in terms of what happened. I mean, especially when it comes to how formidable Lu Bu was as a warrior, the way he's portrayed in the original novel and then subsequently Dynasty Warriors doesn't exactly line up with the actual Lu Bu. And so even the whole, oh, it's like a video game with all these fancy attacks, like, well, yeah, the novel has these moments too, where there's clearly the exaggeration of how skilled these fighters are, because, well, that's what you do with stories like these. You basically
the same thing was done with Journey to the West. That's why in a lot of cases we get interpretations of Son Goku that are as outlandish as they are.
Yeah, and that's because Journey to the West is another novel based on an actual person who actually journeyed all the way to India, but then naturally as stories were told over time, there was embellishments added. I mean, if you look, again, I talked about the channel Cool History Bros. They have a lot of videos that actually talk about, okay, here's the real history behind Xuanzang, the main person for Journey to the West. They've recently started doing a summarization series of Romance of the Three Kingdoms and looking over of, and they always make it clear, hey, here's what's explained in the story, and then later on they're going to explain, okay, here's the actual history of what happened. And so even seeing stuff like the Muso attacks, well, Dynasty Warriors, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, there have been weirder adaptations that have gotten away with a lot worse, and so at least here it's like, hey, this looks like the kind of film. And again, I grew up playing Dynasty Warriors 2. It was a very much loved game in my household. And so I look at this, I'm just like, yeah, it pretty much looks exactly how a good Dynasty Warriors movie would look. And so I'm excited.
No, yeah, I absolutely want to check this out, because it just looks and feels like Dynasty Warriors to me. So yeah, if we do a review on this, obviously we'll figure that out. But if you guys want it, I mean, we'll deliver, because that looked amazing. Shay and Alex, if you guys have an opinion, feel free to share it. Like, you guys got to watch the trailer too.
It looks good.
Okay, all right.
I have no complaints.
No, that was great. Like, this is gonna be something I'm absolutely charged for. What about you, Alex?
No, I guess it's all right, but it's probably really not in my interest, my wheelhouse. So.
And there goes my hopes and dreams. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
I mean, I will say this. I think part of the reason why I'm as excited for this is just because Mortal Kombat left such a sour taste in my mouth that I'm just like, finally, something that isn't so bland and soulless, that isn't ashamed of what it's trying to be.
All right. So we do have another story to take on, rather a discussion. Alex, do you want to go ahead and introduce this, since you're the one that found the article for it?
All right. So let me just pull it up real quick. So this op-ed piece from CBR.com pitched a hypothetical sort of wish that Nintendo would buy out Way Forward. Now, Way Forward, as people probably know, they make the Shantae series. They've done uh there's another series they're well known for that escapes me. It's kind of a Mega Man inspired series, but and
yeah, I'm not remembering that one, but like DuckTales Remastered, Mummy
yep,
Demastered are in their repertoire.
yeah. So Way Forward, they do occasionally get to make these, really unique indie games, but for the most part, they've subsided on licensed titles. So the article likes to make the pitch that maybe Nintendo should buy them out so that they could have a little bit more freedom to do other things, or to, of course, work on sort of retro style Nintendo games.
So, I guess we'll start things off with you. Like, where do you stand from this article on it? Like, do you want to see Nintendo buy Way Forward, or do you want to see Way Forward kind of remain independent?
I'm a bit 50-50 on it. I think it could be good if Nintendo buys them, but I'm also kind of worried if Nintendo were to buy them, then that would just kind of be a new problem on an already existing. Right? It's like I mentioned, Way Forward's bread and butter is more licensed properties.
Yes.
The indie games are more the passion projects that they get to make because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of afraid, though, if Nintendo were to buy Way Forward, they may not get to make any kind of more passion projects like Shantae in the Shantae series.
No, I'm pretty sure
just
you'd
be
see
kinda,
that go away.
Yeah, maybe not. That's what I'm kind of worried about, is that they might just be kind of relegated to work on the lesser Nintendo properties, or they might just be relegated to Nintendo's retro arm, like Retro Studios is, right? Where, so basically they'll just make Metroid games.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be opposed to a Way Forward Metroid game, but I'd hate to see them have to sacrifice something like Shantae.
Yeah, they've got the Metroidvania down. So at that point, giving them a retro Metroid game would be fine. But yeah, I'm not 50-50 about it. I actually wouldn't want Nintendo to do it personally, and it's just because of the strengths that you're pointing out with Way Forward, is that a lot of the pet projects, I think in a lot of cases, have gained more popularity than the licensed properties that they get. Like, I know a lot of people know them for DuckTales Remastered, but I think in a lot of cases, people know more about Shantae from them than they know anything else. Hence why, like, I remember when people, like, and I actually want to ask both Shay and Romney can step in here too, but Shay and Alex, like, how did you guys feel when the Kazuya reveal happened, or the Kazuya gameplay reveal happened, and then we found out that, yeah, Shantae is basically a pipe dream. She will never be in Smash. Instead, she'll get a Mii Fighter costume, and that's it.
I actually didn't see that, but yeah, that's pretty disheartening to hear.
Yeah, so when they showed off Kazuya, they showed off a Dante from Devil May Cry costume, a Shantae costume, a Dovahkiin from Skyrim, and what was the other one?
Lloyd from Tales of
Symphonia. So those are pretty much just guaranteed they're not happening, kind of thing. And I know a lot of Shantae fans were pissed at that.
Yeah, that really sucks, because Shantae really was the swan song for the original Game Boy Color. Its timing was just awful because it had to come out right when the Game Boy Advance came out. So, yeah, of course, it kind of became a bit of a cult hit. But I think it deserves it more than Cloud deserves to be in Smash.
I'm not getting into that. Shay, are you aware of Way Forward? Do you have any favorite games from them?
I'm not really aware of Way Forward. Okay. I've never played any of the games,
Okay. Well, no, there's a reason that I double-checked this, is because, like, for all we know, you were, like, a closet Shantae fan, and we didn't know that. So people can go, oh, well, then they can go talk to you about Shantae or whatever.
Yeah. And to kind of add on to that as well, I can kind of understand the disappointment, but at the same time, I can see why they did it. Mostly because, as Sakurai has stated repeatedly, all the DLC fighters were decided well in advance, And so the Mii costumes are more or less the compromise he's able to get from Nintendo. I mean, we famously see this with Geno, where Nintendo's like, we don't really want Geno in the game. Sakurai probably thinking, okay, well then how about a Mii costume? And they're like, okay, yeah, sure, you can put in a Mii costume.
Yeah. So at that point, I mean, like, you guys are just kind of hitting home why I don't... Like, it would be great to be able to see them have the money that Nintendo would provide them as a second-party studio. But then you would see things like Shantae go away. And in fact, Way Forward, I think, given current Nintendo, would be underutilized under them. Because you're exactly right, Alex. They'd be... basically, for Metroid, they'd be making retro Metroid games, and never allowed to do anything else. They might even get like the optional opportunity to go work on, you know, like a 16-bit remastered revival of F-Zero or something like that. But that's it. You wouldn't be able to see some of the other things that they've been able to build. Like, for people who follow the indie game scene, Double Dragon... Let me just read off a few of these. Double Dragon Neon, The Mummy Demastered, the Shantae series, obviously, DuckTales Remastered, Marvel Puzzle Quest. They were the ones that worked on that, and I know a lot of people like that version over a lot of others. Contra 4, the old DS game that people still tell me like, if they're Contra fans, they're still playing. Aliens Infestation. These are all properties that would never be able to be worked on if Way Forward was owned by Nintendo. They would basically be put in a corner and said, okay, you're going to work on our retro arm, and that's it. We're never going to do anything with you. We're never going to let you do another Shantae game. You are just plain done. And that would be a sad thing. That's why in a lot of cases, I know I'm going to get a lot of crap for this, because it kind of sounds like I'm saying I don't want this company to be successful, but I'm not saying that. I want them to be successful, and they're doing well on their own merits. Can they pay the bills as comfortably as Nintendo can? No, but I think that they've been able to figure out a formula that works for them, and they can continue to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Final thoughts, Alex?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe kind of second party exclusives like what they had with Rare back in the 90s might be okay.
Yeah, I
As
can see
opposed
that.
to a full buyout.
Yeah, I can see that being a more favorable route, where maybe there are just certain franchises that they make exclusive for Nintendo systems while still being able to do their own thing. Because I know Creatures is in a similar situation. That's how we were able to get games like Tembo the Badass Elephant, in addition to their work on the Pokemon series.
Yeah, and man, I really wish we could work out a deal like that. But unfortunately, the way that Nintendo has been doing things in the last few years, it makes me very skeptical as to whether or not they would do a deal like that anymore. Especially considering that right now, I don't want to say this, but it has to be said, they're a little bit backward when it comes to the other systems. And I know that a lot of people have, including Nintendo, have just kind of written themselves off as being the second-tier nostalgia brand, but they do actually want to be successful compared to companies like Sony. And so at that point, if they wanted to do that, then they would be doing what Sony is doing, which is buying up these studios and owning them. And that's kind of the sad reality right now. This is one of the things that makes me very irritated when I found out that Ninja Theory was bought up by Microsoft. That restricts them so hard. They now have to work on whatever Microsoft wants them to work on. And yeah, I know that some people are going to be like, well, they've even said that they're going to give them the freedom to do what they want. No, they're not. Let's be honest. Like, let's not be candid here. Let's be honest. They can work on that stuff, but it will always be second banana to what Microsoft wants them to work on. And that's the sad reality there. And another one that came to mind was Sony just recently had a purchase that was kind of irritating too. And I can't remember.
Blue Point Studios.
Which one?
Blue Point Studios was the most recent one.
They did acquire Blue Point. So now Blue Point, they are the remake arm. As far as Sony is concerned, they will do nothing but remake Dark Souls or remake not Shadow of the Colossus, but any other popular game.
Yeah, the current rumor at present, and this is something that has been somewhat corroborated, but again, it's still a bit sketchy, where the rumored project that Sony is hoping to make, emphasis, hoping to make, is a remake of Metal Gear Solid for modern systems.
Yes, but I'm not saying that this isn't what Blue Point wants to do, but if Blue Point had another project that maybe they wanted to pitch to Sony, that is a lot harder of a sell compared to what Sony has in terms of agenda for them. And so that's where it gets a little bit sad in that regard. Is like, I don't want to see companies just absorbed. I want to see them have lucrative partnerships like they used to back in the old days. And
honestly,
you can't do that now.
Honestly, what Nintendo's been doing currently, where they've basically been trying to be more buddy-buddy with indie studios, I think that's more the better approach for them to take.
Yes.
Rather than be like, hey, we're going to buy up all these studios, it's more like, oh, hey, here's our dev kit. Make games for us. We're going to make it really easy for you to put stuff on our website.
Studios, like, help be the company that says, okay, go nuts with our hardware. We'll help you be able to make this work.
Yeah, especially when considering the rumors that we're hearing about how Sony has been effectively, holding storefront property ransom for a lot of indie developers of, you need to pay us extra money in order to do sales, in order for your games to be featured prominently. I think currying the favor of the indie devs the way Nintendo has been doing is probably going to be the better way to go for them in the long run, because then it basically establishes them as saying, hey, we're the kind of company that doesn't buy you out. We'll still let you do what you want, and we're the kind of people you want to work with. We make stuff that you're easy to port to and easy to develop for.
That makes them the company of freedom. Whereas Sony and Microsoft, they're just basically buying people out and saying, go make what we want you to make, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of ironic. What we're seeing is effectively a full reversal between Nintendo and Sony, because back in the heyday, Sony was the company of freedom.
The irony is not lost on me.
Yeah, like it's just weird seeing this, where Nintendo, that used to be the draconian, we're going to control the market, is now the company of freedom. And I'm just like, Sony, do you not see what is happening? Do you need to see that clip from The Dark Knight to remind you?
No, they're too busy editing Doki Doki Literature Club to actually give a crap. Yeah, I don't know if Alex saw that. Did you see that?
I didn't see that.
Yep, they are already censoring the hell out of it.
Yeah, well, at least we've got the Switch version.
Yeah,
and the Steam version. So.
Yeah, the Steam version, the Switch version will actually show blood instead of making it so that the girls bleed squid ink. Why? All right, and so that's actually all the stories that we have here, but we have a little bit of extra business to take care of, because we actually did bring on the reigning, defending, undisputed Geek News Movie Night champion to be able to bring on is... we still have another Geek News Movie Night where you have made the suggestion, Shay. And so therefore we need to take care of that unfinished business. So really quick, Alex and Romney, do you want to quickly go over the suggestions that you have made for this new theme?
Yeah, I think the viewers could do with a reminder. Alex, if you'd like to go first.
All right. My pick was Collateral, the movie from, I want to say it was 2005. The movie directed by Michael Mann, starring Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx.
Okay.
And my pick was Professor Layton and the Eternal Diva, the anime film.
All right. And so for me, because the champion always goes last, because she's the defending one. So I actually had a lot of trouble trying to figure out a suggestion for this, because a lot of the stuff that I would be suggesting was just going to be from the same old wheelhouse that everybody would expect from me. So I kind of opened it up, and I actually did reach out to the panel here to say, like, okay, is it going to be okay if I do this? And if not, like, I already have another one that I can go for. Thankfully, they approved it. So without further ado, the suggestion that I have is a listener-requested one. I am suggesting the original John Wick. Because why not? So there you go. Mine is John Wick. Shay, the reigning defending champion, what is your suggestion for Geek News Movie Night?
So my suggestion is a movie that I've seen, but I had recently only watched it, I think like maybe last year. And that is Searching. So Searching was made in 2018. It is starring John Cho, who of course is going to be also playing Spike Spiegel in Cowboy Bebop. And that's basically the movie I chose. I chose it because it is actually, I think the setting is in San Jose, California, which is not far from me. And the main premise of the movie is, am I allowed to say the main premise of the movie?
If you want to.
So basically the main premise of the movie is that John Cho plays a dad whose daughter goes missing. So it's shot in an interesting way that he's basically trying to track her digital footprint through her computer to try and find out like what happened to her.
Okay.
Yeah, it had a really low budget, like $880,000 was
Wow.
pretty much the budget, but it made 75.5 million in the box office.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's
so-
done in like this great homemade style. So yeah.
All right.
Thought it would
I
be a
like
good
this
pick.
suggestion. So, without further ado, those are the 4 choices. Now, people who are brand spanking new to this, here's the way that it works. In the next day or so, I will be putting up a straw poll on my Twitter, so you guys can follow that at Drac2326. And we will have these 4 suggestions laid out for you, and you guys will decide in 7 days what we will be watching for the next Geek News movie night. So once again, we have Collateral from 2005, we have the original John Wick, we have Professor Layton and the Eternal Diva, and finally, the reigning and defending champion suggestion, Searching from 2008. So...
2018.
Oh, sorry. Jeez, I always do that now.
Sorry, I was wrong. It was 2004 is when Collateral came out.
Okay, so 2004. So there you go. Those are the suggestions. Make sure to make your opinion known, and then the following week after that, we will get together and we will watch it and give our thoughts on Geek News Movie Night. Until then, though, we have run out of time this wonderful day. I always regret this because I always have such fun talking the stories with you guys, but all things must come to an end. So, first of all, thank you so much, Shay Tari, for joining us once again, talking the week's events in Geek. If people want to reach out to your content and check it out, how do they do so?
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube, youtube.com/ShayTari. I upload videos twice a week on Wednesdays and Saturdays. You can also find me on like Instagram. I'm also on Twitter, and I'm also on TikTok. I started uploading like little mini anime reviews on anime and manga that I've finished reading and just my thoughts on them in about like 30 seconds.
Okay.
So yeah, you can definitely check me out on there.
All right. Alex the Shadow Blazer, how do people find you?
I'm also on YouTube, and Shadow Blizzard 3000 is my channel. I do anime content there. Most recently, I just did a video where I looked at a bunch of old issues of New Type USA, so check that out if you like me looking at old magazines.
All right. And Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, how do people get a hold of your content?
Well, you can find me under my channel, Studio Ghost Utah. That is my handle on YouTube, Facebook, and SoundCloud when I actually have something to upload and am not currently trying to keep my head above water working in news. And if you want to see a more personal side of me, that usually features book reviews, pictures of cats, pictures of stuff that I cook, and the occasional angsty comic, you can follow me on Instagram at RomneyDoesArt. And the last area that you can follow me on, don't really do anything with it. I'm just putting it out there so that way people know it exists. And that's my Twitter at RomneyReviews. And speaking of manga releases, the recommendation for this week's episode of Geek News Reviews and Opinions is actually a manga that I recently started getting into that is only 2 chapters in so far and is currently available on the Shonen Jump app. And that is Neru Way of the Martial Arts. Basically, it's another more grounded martial arts-based action shonen series, very much on brand for Shonen Jump. I've been enjoying the first 2 chapters. I'm really excited to see where this new series is going to go. So that's this week's recommendation, and you can read it for free through the Shonen Jump app. No, this is not a sponsored plug, but I wish it was.
Man, it would be great if it was, wasn't it? All right, and then if people want to reach out to my content, obviously you guys are on my channel right now, so you guys can check out all the live stream content that I do, as well as the Let's Play content and other random rants that I actually take on, specifically in regards to things like World of Warcraft, because I've been very upset with where they're going with their story there. But you guys can check that out. You can also check me out on Twitter at Drac2326. That is primarily where a lot of the Geek News stuff is right now, because frankly, I don't know how long I'm going to trust either Facebook, Twitter, or any of those social media platforms with advertising anything for the podcast, because they just don't work out that well. But you guys can find me on Twitter at Drac2326. You can also find me on Instagram at Drac2326, where I put up pictures of my kids, random fart memes, random geeky memes that I tend to find. I especially loved where... and I just want to tell this because this is such a dumb thing, but it's so hilarious. Somebody recently sent me a video of an All Elite Wrestling match where usually as a gimmick in pro wrestling, you'll have this moment where somebody in a hardcore match will pull out a bag of thumbtacks and then they'll start doing bumps on the thumbtacks, right? So it's kind of gross and it looks painful and everything like that. Well, they decided to do a unique gimmick on this, and instead of having a bag of thumbtacks, they decided to have a bag of literal D20s, and various other D&D or tabletop role-playing dice, and do the same bumps on it. And oh my gosh, it was hilarious to see. So you guys can check that out on my Instagram feed, and I encourage you to do so. But in the meantime, that's going to go ahead and do it for... and also, geez, I always forget to do this now. If you guys want to be able to follow the podcast, the first thing that we ask you guys do is go check out the RSS feed, which is geekynro.libsyn.com, where everything is hosted. For all the people who are loving Geek News Marathon Night with Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, that's where the episodes go up first, and you get them for a whole week before YouTube gets them, so make sure to be able to follow there, as well as Geek News Movie Night goes there, and anything else that we actually think about doing, because I have a feeling we're also going to be doing a roundtable episode pretty soon on Resident Evil 8, and maybe even for the Dynasty Warriors movie, because that would be exciting too. So you guys can check all of that out there. Also, you can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts /Audible. You can check us out on Spotify as well as Player.fm. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us this wonderful day. Thank you so much to my lovely panel for joining me. Thank you so much to the live chat for joining us today for this discussion. And we will be back next week for even more geek news, reviews, and opinions. So for myself, for Shay, for Alex, and